Hello, everyone. Welcome to the official spring edition of Triangle Be Well. Sunny skies, beautiful day, plants growing in the garden. I'm your host, Howard Jacobson, Pahud, and I'm joined in the studio by Amnon Nissan wearing a charming red shirt.
And I would love to be outside with you. It is gorgeous.
It's gorgeous. And here we are in your studio with the hot lights on
Yeah,
me.
I'm worrying about it getting too hot in here.
Yeah, my
Yeah,
makeup's
I know.
running.
The nice thing I like about it is the rain washed the pollen away. Well, most of it, but
That's
I think we're going to have a little bit more.
That's true. I used to, oh man, I remember before I discovered what to eat, especially as a kid, I had the worst allergies. Um, I would go for 2 months of the year just in utter misery, just carrying around uh, tissues. My nose would get sore and raw from all the sneezing and blowing my nose. My eyes would be watering. I remember at one point I became a teacher and I'd have to go up to Blairstown, New Jersey to lead these, 2, 3, 4 day trips with groups of kids, sort of orientation and adventure courses. And I basically just hid under the covers and just tried to keep air away from my face, which is not a great survival tactic, by the way. I remember the worst it ever got. I think my freshman or junior year in college, I went to the clinic and I got allergy shots, and that made a teeny difference. But then when I turned 24 and I read John Robbins' Diet for a New America, and I instantly eliminated dairy from my diet, I have not had a problem since. Like from sort of weeping and honking and just incapacitated. And I'd never really tried the allergy meds because they just put me to sleep. And if you are suffering from allergies, man, find your trigger, whatever it is, because here's the thing: allergies are sort of a hyperactive immune system protecting you from things from which you don't need protection. And so if you think about what would make an immune system hyperactive, would make it extra jumpy, it's basically being stressed out by other things. So that if all the time you're eating foods that you're allergic to or that are migrating from your gut into your bloodstream and causing all the alarms to go off, then you're very, very close to having an allergic reaction to just about anything. It's so jumpy. Imagine you hire a security guard to guard your warehouse at night, and this person has like PTSD from the war, and every time they hear a noise, out comes their weapon. Like that's kind of what our immune systems can become when they're just overloaded with challenges. So little challenge is fine, is good actually. We talked about this last week about kids growing up in the dirt
Hmm.
and not having so many allergic reactions. But if you are suffering from allergies, that's one of the quickest things you can recover from, by eliminating allergens from your diet. Because if you think about the percentages, the ratio of what you're taking into your body from pollen that you're breathing in versus the food you're eating, you see the pollen is just a small bit compared to all the stuff you're taking into your body through food.
So how do you find out the trigger?
Well, so there are some common triggers. I mean, there's a couple ways to do it. One is you could get a very, very expensive battery of allergy tests. Literally over 100 pinpricks.
Yeah, and they all come up with.
Yeah. So they're all there's a difference between having antibodies and having a full-blown miserable allergic reaction. So one of the problems with the allergy testing industry is that it's going to find more things than you need to worry about. And so if I tell you, let's eliminate dairy, you say, okay, maybe I can do that. But if I say, okay, I want you to eliminate dairy, corn, potatoes, soy, wheat,
Go back to breastfeeding.
Yeah, right. I know a lot of people who wouldn't mind that. I think the problem is the owner of the breast might have something to say about that.
Oh.
Yeah, so that the goal here you know, the goal on Earth, I think, is to kind of have a good time, find meaning, be fun, be useful, have fun. The goal is not to restrict yourself in every which way possible. So if you're suffering from something, you want to, you know, find the thing that caused it. So the minimum effective dose, either of something you add or something you subtract. So that now that said, there are one thing you can do is an elimination diet. So there are certain foods that are almost never um, allergic, you know,
Okay,
allergy
before you get
causing.
into that.
Yeah.
So let's say that it's dairy.
Okay.
So I'm eliminating dairy.
Hmm.
How long before I see the results of okay, when is that effect
Yeah.
of the
When.
dairy gonna leave my body and I can say, oh yeah, that's what it was.
Right. Okay. So there's
I know it's
there's
probably different from
yeah.
person to person, but
Yeah, sadly. Yeah, there's three answers. One answer is it really depends on the person, especially, you know, for a lot of the people I work with, my clients are people who have been doing the same thing for decades. And if the thing they've been doing for decades has been, you know, leading to worse and worse health, you you don't expect to reverse it in
right.
overnight or in a week. So depending on the thing, certain things are more responsive than others. So certain biomarkers are highly responsive to diet, for example. Like when I was working with the folks who produced the movie Plant Pure Nation with Nelson Campbell and his team up in Mebane, he said one of the things we're going to do, we're going to feed people for 10 days and we're going to do blood work before and after. And by the way, for folks who are on the line who are listening, we're gonna turn this into a Q&A. As soon as you jump in with questions, I am very trainable. I will just shut up and listen if you have questions that we can talk about. But so don't wait for another invitation. If you've got something you want to talk about, and specifically today, I've asked people to come with questions about habits, about transition, things that I don't need to go home and look up or, you know, pretend to know about and make a fool of myself. So sort of coachy type questions rather than specific health related issues.
And it's very simple to get a hold of us too.
So yeah, let's. That was a prompt, wasn't it? I, I love that. And so you didn't go, idiot, tell him the number.
I wouldn't say.
I trained my wife because I'd be driving and then she, you know, we're supposed to stop at ShopRite on the way home and I'd be driving. She's, you're gonna stop at the ShopRite? And of course I wasn't, but my pride was hurt. So I'd be like, of course I was. So I trained her as we're approaching the turnoff. She would go, do you think we should get bananas at ShopRite? And then that would remind me without having to me admit. So yes, so let's talk about how you can get in touch with us. The phone number to call in is 919 518 9773. 919 518 9773. And on Skype, you can find us at Computers 2K Voice. K is for, oh, I learned this. I learned all of the like Alpha, Bravo, uh, Kilo. Thank you. All right. So you see, I'm getting a little loopy here, so I need some calls to bring me back. But so your question about how long it will take.
I mean, yeah.
So
Because,
here's the other two answers.
yeah, if I'm eliminating it for a month and you don't know, you're missing the period to find out whether you're still allergic.
Right.
Well, if
So here's the big problem with food. So I'm guessing you don't put your hand over the open flame on your stove,
right,
right? I'm guessing you don't. You know, there's lots of things that we learn very quickly not to
not
do.
to do.
And the way we learn things is from clear, relevant, immediate, precise, specific feedback. So if you want to learn how to, you know, swing a golf club, and you know hit a drive, you're gonna need a teacher for a while to say, okay, you know, drop the shoulder, do this. At a certain point, you reach a level where you can feel it yourself, and then you can hit the ball and you see, oh, did it go left? Did it go right? Did it go far? Did it bounce? And so you know the feedback is what helps you learn, and the more immediate and specific the feedback is, the quicker you will learn. People get very, very good at video games very, very quickly because it's such an exquisite feedback mechanism. So a lot of people in the learning space are are working to decrease the time, the distance between the action and the feedback. So, for example, this weekend I heard on NPR about a professor of music at Stanford who is translating physical activity into song, into the human voice. So, what we can use, and he used a golf swing. So he would take professional golfers, people who would swing really, really well. He would hook up electrodes to various points, sensors to various points in their body, and he would get a picture of a great swing, and that became like, ah, like a nice sounding human voice. And then he would calibrate at however far you went off from that to uglier sounds. So then we heard a bad swing. It was like, roar. And so, you know, when you hit the ball, it could take 5-10 seconds for the ball to move and land. But when you have that immediate audio feedback, it can help people learn very, very quickly. It's the same thing with how I learned to control my my parasympathetic nervous system through biofeedback. Just hooking up things and watching a monitor go up and down right away. What was the question?
The question was, so how long should you wait? I mean, let's say I want to
Oh, yeah,
eliminate dairy.
Yes. Okay, I remember why I was going there. So the problem with food is that if you eat something, you don't get sick instantly.
Right.
You don't have pain instantly. What you have instantly is pleasure, right? Especially the more fat the food, you know, the more salt, the more sugar, the more densely concentrated the calories, the more pleasure you get. And so you get instant pleasure, and then it's a seduction. You get instant pleasure, and then later on, whether it's an hour later or 5 days later or 5 years later or 20 years later, right? So, you know, cancer is the worst because cancer takes decades very often to grow, but it's growing on the food that you're eating and enjoying in the moment. So here's my experience was within 2 days of eliminating dairy, I felt a difference. I felt a change. Now, when people go on an elimination diet, which is so they stick to foods that are shown to be non-innocuous, and they'll do that for 30 days, and they'll see first of all, whatever the thing or things they're worried about, does it get better? So, for example, I used to think everybody just breathed when they breathe through their nose, it was stuffed. Mm-hmm. Apparently, there are people who can breathe through their nose without it being stuffed, like a clear nasal passage. Just blows my mind. So the question is it possible for me to achieve that? You know, is it some sort of problem, the fact that I smacked myself in the nose with a racquetball racket when I was 12 and something's pinched and it's never going to be, I'll need surgery to make it better, in which case I have a wish list of other things they could do while they're on that topic. But, is it something that I've been eating every single day of my life or not every single day, but on a regular enough basis that I would never notice? So eliminate almost everything for 30 days and see, does it get better? Wow, is it clear now after 30 days? Have I stopped having allergies? If it's, so you want to do it obviously in May or June and not in January when you wouldn't have the allergies.
Right.
So, for 30 days. And then the second part of the elimination diet after 30 days of elimination is add things back in one at a time in large quantities. So,
in large quantities.
Right. So for when I first did it, I eliminated, soy, wheat, corn, tomatoes, eggs, and then I would add things back in one at a time, and I'd see, or peanuts. So I would have, like for soy, I would have tofu 2 or 3 times a day. I would have soy sauce. I would, there's no missing it. Okay, I don't really notice a change. It's fine. Wheat. Boy, I got tired all of a sudden. I just had a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. The peanuts were fine, but now I just added back the wheat. Whew, I need a nap. Maybe there's something there.
Okay. So you would take it. I mean, if let's say you are drinking a glass of milk a day,
mm-hmm.
and you eliminated it, and when you come back after 30 days, you would want to take more than 1 glass a day to see if that's what it was, or you stay with the way that you were using that food?
No, I would accentuate it.
Okay. Okay.
So there's a lot of things that are harmful to us in small doses, but they're subclinical. So we don't really notice them, even though they're still problematic. So the way that you figure out what that is that you increase the exposure. So this is how like trials on animals work to determine like are hot dogs carcinogenic. So we'll take rats and we'll give them 2,000 hot dogs a day, the equivalent, and if they get cancer, then we say, well, that's carcinogenic. Now that's a little bit silly because no one is eating that kind of dosage. But to say 3 glasses of milk a day instead of 1 is not an order of magnitude difference. If all of a sudden we say, all right, now you're gonna have to have 100 glasses a day.
No, yeah.
Then yeah, then we're in the realm of who cares. I like drinking water. I'll drink 64 ounces a day. If I had to drink a swimming pool, I'd be dead.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So everything has its dose response. So you want to make sure it's a large. Your challenge. It's called the allergic challenge is so the high end of what you ever might have. And
so you add them one at a time afterwards, and if it didn't make any change, you
can keep it.
You keep them until you hit the one that. Hopefully, you'll hit the one that.
Right. Right.
Okay.
Right.
Right.
And now I also want to make a point that this is not destiny.
Right.
That if you have an allergy, you don't always need to have the allergy, even if it's to a food. So one of the reasons we have allergies to food is because of our guts, the microbes in our guts. And I'm reading a fantastic book. It was recommended to me by Pam Popper of Wellness Forum Health. It's called Missing Microbes by Martin Blazer. And he talks about he's a immunologist. He studied infectious disease, and he's talking about the importance, the discoveries we're making about the importance of the bacteria and the fungi and the algae and all the creatures in our bodies that are not us. And if you sort of measure it in terms of DNA, there's more not us DNA in our bodies than us. There are more not us cells than us, and they're in there for good reason. Like after all these billions of years of evolution, they've the ones that are colonizing us serve a function for us. Otherwise, if they were harmful, if they were neutral, maybe they would stay, but probably not, because it's like a high rent district. He talks about the good spots are high rent, so we would only want to reward critters who do something good for us. If something's neutral, then we can do better. It's like you have a free apartment, someone can stay in it, but if someone else wants to pay rent, you'll probably kick out the free renter.
Sure.
So and these bacteria do a lot of the work in metabolizing our food. So one estimate is that the bacteria that live in our large intestine can, if they're working properly and we feed them right, they add about 10 to 15% of our calories from metabolizing the fiber, the insoluble fiber that has just gone through our system. There are bacteria that can eat the fiber and then use that for calories. So if we're feeding our microbiome the right kind of food, and then then those microbes can eat food that we might have trouble eating. The extreme example is like cows and other ruminants with multiple stomachs. They can't digest grass. Cows can't digest grass at all, but they've got bacteria in their multiple stomachs, in their 4 stomachs, that can do different tasks. So it's like having a workforce. When Steve Jobs ran Apple, I'm sure he couldn't build an iPhone. I'm sure maybe he could learn how to solder, but he needed a workforce to accomplish all of the specialized tasks. So if you're eating a standard diet, if you're having a diet that's high in fat, high in animal protein, high in dairy, high in sugar, then you're feeding those microbes that are going to do a good job of metabolizing that stuff, and you're going to have trouble metabolizing other stuff. So the allergies might be because your bacterial workforce is not capable. So through selective refeeding, through probiotics, and there's other techniques, and I haven't looked into the efficacy. I haven't looked into there's something called NAET, which is a kind of a various challenges where you desensitize people to allergies, because certain allergies could be learned responses. If we think about food not just as matter, but on a higher level as information, then it's like certain foods are like computer viruses. Like they're going to mess up our processors, but we can retrain our CPUs or our software to be able to say, okay, I understand what this virus does, and I can negate it or neutralize it, or use it to run some subprogram that would actually be helpful. So that's what I have to say about that.
So to recap this thing, you could eliminate. There's the chance that you could eliminate some allergies by just taking probiotics.
Not just taking probiotics.
No, I mean by adding that.
Right, by adding that, but remember probiotics. We talked about this last week, right?
Right.
Probiotics are those critters who will come. You can get
But
them,
you need to
but
feed them.
I remember one year I was reading about gardening, and I was always been against pesticides and stuff. So I wanted to do organic gardening, and one of the things that people do in organic gardening is they get bugs. They'll buy bugs to eat the bad bugs. So they'll buy praying mantises to eat the things, or they'll buy these certain things that eat aphids, or what are the ladybugs? You can buy like thousands of those, and so one year I bought like 5,000 praying mantises, like a huge box. Oh, they're gonna eat up all the bad bugs. Dumped them in the garden.
And they flew away.
Whew. So somebody benefited. It sure wasn't me, because there was nothing. It wasn't interesting to them. It wasn't a, it wasn't an ecosystem that supported praying mantises as an apex species. So if you take probiotics, you want to feed those probiotics with prebiotics, and the prebiotics you want to feed them ideally is food. So if you feed them the food that they eat, then they'll stay. The right food, right? The food that they eat. So I mean, there are bacteria that can do just about anything. There's bacteria that live in like volcanic vents at the bottom of the Marianas Trench, miles under sea level. They metabolize like rock. Like there is a bacterium in your body that could eat anything. The question is that the bacteria that you want predominating and proliferating? So in his book Missing Microbes, he's talking about, for one thing, the two main reasons we don't have healthy gut bacteria anymore, including as well as we have very, very weakened ecosystems of bacteria. First is antibiotics, and not antibiotics. He estimates that most adults in America have had like 30 or 40 courses of antibiotics over their lifetime, and I know people who've had a lot more. I probably have had a lot more. And the second is we're not passing on our microbiomes from mother to child as often. We're sterilizing the operating theater. We're doing a lot of C-sections. We're doing a lot of bottle feed, formula feeding instead of breastfeeding. So we're working off of what he calls bacterial winter. So we just don't have enough living things, and we're seeing all sorts of problems. There's a lot of evidence that your microbiome determines more about your health than you do. So if you have a certain gut bacteria, that can lead to obesity. They're eating things that would otherwise not get eaten and converting it and slowing down other elements of the metabolism. And by the way, it's not just the antibiotics that you take. If you raise your child completely antibiotic free, they are getting antibiotics. They're getting, right. This is something I learned from the book last night, that in factory farms, animals are routinely fed doses of antibiotics. Now, I thought it was because they were in such terrible conditions that they would die without the antibiotics. Apparently, that's only true for factory farmed fish, where they're so crowded and the water is so fouled that they need antibiotics to keep them alive. But for the others, it was discovered that when humans were put on antibiotics, they gained weight. And so if you have a chicken that weighs 6 pounds instead of a chicken that weighs 5 pounds, you get to make more money. So they're actually giving subclinical doses of antibiotics to animals to increase their weight, so they can sell more poundage of the animal and make more money. And it's, especially the economics of factory farming are it's a game of pennies. You have to do it on volume. So there's no farmer who's gonna risk saying, well, I'm gonna stop putting antibiotics in my chickens or cows or pigs because I'm going to make less money. I'm going to be less competitive. I'm going to still pay the same amount for the rest of the feed. Antibiotics sold by the ton is very, very cheap compared to other aspects of farming. So no individual farmer, unless they say, okay, well, I'm going to specifically going to go organic, which means I'm going to limit my market a great deal. I have to deal with all sorts of regulations. All right, so if the European Union banned antibiotic feed in animals, so then all the farmers could say, okay, now we can all stop using it. Now, level playing field, right? When you're waiting for, and so the only way to level the playing field is to for us to vote the bums out of office, who are not protecting our food supply, or to become a big enough voting block in terms of voting with our dollars. If people stop buying factory farm meat, and and there's Facebook pages with tens of millions of people saying, get the antibiotics out of my feed. So there's that. So even if you don't eat the meat or drink the milk, you're still getting antibiotics in the water because the animals are all, it's a closed system. There's no, Earth is not this system with like stuff flowing in and then from outer space and then flowing back out in a different direction. There's no away, right? You can't throw anything away. You can't make anything be gone. It's all, in us, in our tissues, in our water supply, in our food supply. And so,
And there's not much we can do, right? I mean, you have to drink water.
Yeah.
And if you drink bottled water, you don't know what in that.
Right. No, it's there's only so much you can do
right.
when the you're on a boat with a hole in it, even if it's under someone else's seat.
Yeah. But you can minimize.
You can minimize, and I think the most important thing is to not be silent about your preferences.
Right. Educate.
So go to your store and say, here's what I want. They hear it from enough people. Years ago I was in marketing, and one of the tricks that marketers would do is if they had a new product they wanted to get on the shelf somewhere, they would hire 30 people over the course of a month to call the store and ask for the product. And by the time, and they've never heard of the product the first time, but by the 30th time, they've heard of the product, and then the manufacturer or the retailer or the wholesaler or the marketer calls up and says, "Hey, I have this product." Then the person is like, "Oh my God, where have you been?" Right? Kind of sleazy, but
I mean, it is sleazy. Last week we had to replace some pipes under the house.
Yeah.
And Greg wanted to get a PVC fitting. We went to Home Depot and bought a bunch of different things, but he wanted a certain piece to be PVC, and the box was empty. And we called the guy and said, we need that one from PVC. He said, we don't have any more. You can get it in brass, which costs about 10 times more. And I said, never mind. Let's put the stuff back. We'll go to Lowe's across the street. Oh, wait a second. Wait, let me find out. So he goes up there. I say, here's a box. So yeah, it's sleaze. It's they do that to you at the store.
And the fact that sleaze works, like every dirty trick in marketing and sales that works, is based on a true principle of human nature. So the fact that you can have 30 people call to create demand is that there is something called social proof, that if a lot of people use something, then you're going to want to use it too. Mm-hmm. So if you have a show here, you're sponsored by Atomos, which makes what do they make? That box.
That's one of them.
I have no idea what that box is.
What do you mean you don't know?
I don't know what it does. It's a box. It's sitting there. I understand the cameras. I understand the monitors. Okay, so it's
a recorder.
It's a recorder. Okay, so it's recording the video. That's what captures it, and then you put it up on.
No, that's a backup.
That's the backup. Okay. So, but it says on your website on NissanCommunications.com, it says sponsored by Atomos.
Because they gave me that.
Okay, it's cool. You can give me one too. So, I don't even know what it does yet. But someone who goes to your site and sees, you have this professional channel. You have a bunch of people. that creates social proof for Atomos. So maybe at some
Absolutely.
point down the line, someone's looking for something. They do an Amazon search and they find 3 different brands, but they see Atomos and they say, "Oh,
Right.
somewhere in my mind there's social proof for that." So we get to do
Yeah,
that.
They didn't give it to me because of my pretty eyes. They
Well,
knew why they're doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right.
So the point is that we can create that kind of demand organically. There's enough of us who understand what is healthy and what is not that we can begin to advocate for it publicly, loudly, commercially, and things will change. I mean, how many? Oh, I've gotten my like local stores, not the big supermarkets, but say local health stores or local groceries, to carry items because I said I would buy them.
Right.
You know, I said, if you get this, I will buy so many a week. If you can you get the organic frozen vegetables? Could you get the pound bag? Because their 5 ounce bags aren't big enough. Can you get? So yeah, good marketers, good business people are highly responsive to their customers' wishes and demands. And you get a small amount and you see if it sells. I built a software business when I was doing Google advertising, and I had 2 partners, and we built it entirely on the requests of our customers. So it started out as an Excel spreadsheet that helped people manipulate keywords, and it was very, very simple. I just programmed it. I just looked things up and programmed how to do it and asked some people some questions. It was basically in the days where your keywords could have different punctuation around them. So if you had a keyword and then you wanted to add quotes around it and you wanted to add brackets around it, you'd have to retype it 3 times. And so we had clients with hundreds of thousands of keywords. And so I just said, dump it into spreadsheet, dump it into column A. Column B gives it to you with brackets. Column C gives it to you with quotation marks. Copy and paste those two and put them in. And so it saved people a lot of time. But quickly, and one of my partners converted it to the web. So it was easy, the output was easier to use, and we could update it on our own servers. But then people started saying, "Hey, could it do this as well?" And I said, "Oh, I never thought of that. Yeah, can we? Yeah, Rob, Eric, can we do that? Oh, good. Yeah, okay, I can do this. How about this? Can we concatenate? Can we make different phrases? Red, green, big, small, buggy, wagon. So now you can concatenate all those and get a whole bunch of phrases." And every single thing we did was based on one of our customers telling us this is what we want. And we grew it to a pretty decent size, not because we were particularly clever, but because we were clever enough to listen to the marketplace. And if you want to advocate for a better world, there's one of the most powerful ways to do it is to buy the things that contribute to a better world and to create the public perception of demand for those things. Right? Remember when the first hybrid car came out? Like the first real one. Like there was like the Prius was the first one that you could actually sit in without like turning into Quasimodo. All right, Prius came out, I think it was 2001, and people were making fun of it. It was a funny looking car. It was a funny name. It had this huge like TV screen in the middle. It was one of the first cars that had a digital monitor, and it took off like crazy. After I think ours was a 2002. We got one of the early ones before they got really weird.
There was
looking.
an older one, not Prius. The first.
The first one I can't remember what
Honda.
it was. Honda
Honda came with an electric. They never took off really.
Right. But and the Prius, it got it was better gas mileage than other cars, but not by much.
Right.
Like it was I would get 46 instead of 42 or 40 for a Corolla, or 42 for one of the smaller Volkswagens. Like it wasn't an order of magnitude difference. It was expensive. It had a battery that needed, but the point is that it came with a value proposition. And I remember being very impressed with the way they trained their salespeople. So the guy like sussed me out. He says, "Okay, sort of hippie tree hugger environmentalist type," and so he's telling me this story about a friend of his who's a biologist who used to would drive the Prius into the forest so quietly that the frogs would keep singing. I have my doubts as to whether he was telling the truth or whether this was like, you know, part of the sales script. But clearly, I wanted that kind of identity. I said, I'm going to buy a car that will save the planet. Regardless of the fact that it's still a car, it's still using gasoline. It's got a battery that's, I don't know where it has to be buried. Probably some other planet in order to be safe and not leach. Like, it was largely a marketing job, as opposed to like if I wanted to save the planet, I would like become Amish. you know, I wouldn't drive anything. But they understood that there was a desire for people to express their values through consumption. And in a lot of cases, expressing our values through consumption is just greenwashing. It's just, I'm going to buy the thing that has the Energy Star sticker on it. It's really not going to make much of a difference. When it comes to the food we eat, there are such vast differences in the quality of the food and the nature of the food we eat between, standard American that's destroying the planet, destroying our health, versus the highest quality stuff we can get, sort of local, sustainable, regenerative, organic, that it's the place you want to make the change, right? The difference between LED bulbs and compact fluorescence and the standard incandescent bulbs is much less than the difference of changing your diet. So if you want to tell people, if you want to get microbes out of our water supply, out of our food chain, or antibiotics rather, out of our water supply, out of our food chain, and you want to give us a chance to, be healthy as a species again, then you got to be clear about it and you got to be loud about it. And you have to advocate as a consumer and as a member of a buying consortium. I don't want to put this crap in my body. I don't want to put this crap in my children. I don't want you putting this crap in our ecosystem at all.
Marsha in the chat is asking, how do I know that I'm getting enough protein?
Okay, Marsha wants to know, how do I know that I'm getting enough protein? So I guess I would look for, first of all, I would look for signs of protein deficiency, which is I can't get out of bed, my muscles are too weak to move me, I've got a huge distended belly. So these are signs of kwashiorkor, of protein deficiency. They're not really seen in the United States, except in very, very rare cases of people with genetic abnormalities that aren't able to metabolize protein. Commonly seen in third world countries where there's caloric restriction as well. So really, as a marketing thing, we all think we need huge amounts of protein. As an actual thing, that's like, how do I know I'm getting enough oxygen? Maybe I need to breathe more, breathe deeper, breathe faster. There are signs of oxygen deprivation. Like, it's called, being strangled, being choked. So the presumption is, in our culture, that we have to worry about protein because we don't think we're getting enough. The truth is, if depending on your diet, if you're eating food, you're getting plenty of protein. I did a segment up in Washington, D.C. for Conscious Living TV. On the way, I stopped at a supermarket and I bought the crappiest day's worth of food I thought you could get. I was like, I wanted to wear like a ski mask because I was so embarrassed. I was buying like, a Tombstone pizza and just all this crap from the frozen section, just the garbagiest food. I bought like crappy, like Little Debbie's snack cakes. I bought a 100-calorie pack of chips, and I took it to the studio and I said, okay, if this is all you eat, you're still getting 10 grams of protein more than you need. And there wasn't even like meat in this stuff. It was just sort of like cheese. And so the first question is are you experiencing any symptoms of protein deficiency? And you can take the symptoms I'm looking at. You can go online and look for protein deficiency. Um, and if not, you're probably getting enough protein or plenty of protein. Um, if you want to double check yourself, so there are various organizations and institutions that tell us how much protein we should be consuming. Um, so the least conservative that still makes any amount of sense would be sort of 1 gram of protein per day per kilogram of body weight. So we might have to do it for Americans. We might have to do a little math of taking your weight in pounds and dividing by 2.2. But so if you're 220 pounds, that's 100 kilograms, and which means you would want 100 grams of protein per day. Now, that's actually not quite right because we're not talking just about weight. So if you imagine a person who weighs 100 kilograms and they have no body fat, and then they start eating like crazy and they gain another 50 kilograms, do they need more protein because of that extra body fat? Fat doesn't need protein. So we're not looking at per body weight, we're looking at per kilogram of lean body mass, which is the body minus the fat. So 1 gram of protein per kilogram of lean body mass is the maximum, and that would be for people who are competitive athletes, for people who have serious issues around protein metabolism, let's say people who are bedridden elderly, pregnant women, breastfeeding mothers, people with very elevated protein requirements. Another is 0.8 grams per kilogram of lean body mass, which is recommended by, that's the US RDA, the recommended daily allowance, or RDI, recommended dietary intake. And that's a fine amount too, but also you have to understand that the RDA the way they figured out the RDA is that they surveyed a bunch of people and did a bunch of lab tests and said, okay, here's the amount of protein that the average person should get. And then we are going to add 2 standard deviations, little statistical jargon for you, but basically we're going to add a lot more to make sure that our recommendation, our RDA, is enough, more than enough for 98% of the population. So for most people, the RDA, their recommended daily allowance should be a lot less than that. It could be like 0.45, but we're going to, just to make sure everyone gets it, we're going to go to 0.8. Now the World Health Organization, which I think has done better research and applies better algorithms to it, says 0.66 grams of protein per 100 per kilogram of lean body mass. So if you want to figure out what that means, what you can do is you can go to a calculator that I had programmed and put online at Protein Aholic. I believe it's, if you go to proteinaholic.com, which is the website for the book that I helped Dr. Garth Davis write, Protein Aholic, so protein and AHOLIC.com. Up at the top right, if you click on the 3 bars, we call it the veggie burger, not the hamburger, the veggie burger, you'll see the top menu will appear. Click on calculator. So you can go in there and you can then put in what is your weight, what is your height. So when we take those two, and then what is your sex, biological sex. When we take those 3, put them together, we can get your BMI, your body mass index. It's not a great measure, but basically, you know, if 2 people weigh 200 pounds, one of them's 6 feet tall, one of them's 4 feet tall, the 4 foot tall person will tend to have more fat. Obviously, people can be bigger boned or smaller boned, can have more muscle or less muscle, but, you know, if you are a bodybuilder, then you know that standard BMI doesn't apply to you. But for most people with sort of average build, average musculature, it's a decent enough measure. So it's going to give you your BMI. We're going to ask you your age, which makes almost no difference whatsoever. And then we're going to tell you how many grams of protein you should have per day based on the World Health Organization and the US government. So then what you can do is you have that number, let's say it's 60. Then take a look at the food you eat. You can go to food databases Um, and like what is it, nutritiondata.self.com is a good database. It's a slightly more usable version of the United States Department of Agriculture database of food nutrients. So if you're worried about it, you can do that. The short answer is you're almost certainly getting enough protein. If you're not wasting away, if you're not getting weaker, if you're not losing huge amounts of muscle mass, and you don't have any of the symptoms of protein deficiency, then you're almost certainly getting more than enough protein. And the reason I say that is, who do you think has the highest protein requirements? Like any human?
Athletes. No?
Athletes.
Athletes.
Okay, no, athletes are up there, but there's a couple of groups that have higher protein requirements. The second highest is the bedridden elderly. Because they're not challenging their muscles, they tend to lose a lot of protein. You use it or lose it, so they're losing a lot of amino acids, and therefore they may need 1 or even 1.2 grams per kilogram of lean body mass. So not much more than that. But if you think about protein, the purpose of protein is basically building blocks for our bodies, for muscles, for bone, for ligaments, tendons. Right? It's construction material. So when do you need the most construction material in the life cycle of a building project? The beginning, when you're building it.
Mm-hmm.
So the most protein is required by babies, infants, right? And so the question is, if that's true, what does nature tell us about what the protein requirement is for an infant? So to do that, we look at Enfamil. No, we look at breast milk. What is the protein amount of protein in breast milk? And it turns out it's between 5 and 6%. So the protein requirement for the time in your life when you need the most protein is about 5%. So that's where it gets interesting, because protein at 5% gives us, of total calories, gives us all the protein we need. And I challenge you to find foods that have protein requirements lower than 5% that are not just fruit. So fruit has pretty low protein, 2%, 3%, depending on the kind of fruit. But let's take something like potato, white potato. No protein in a white potato, right? 11% protein. If you ate nothing but potatoes, you would get more than enough protein.
But you also get some other stuff.
You get other stuff, lots of good stuff. But I'm saying if you're worried about protein, you might not say, well, I'm going to go on an all potato diet, but you'd be fine. White pasta, white spaghetti, 15% protein. White rice, 9% protein. So if you're eating whole plant foods, and even pasta is not a whole plant food, it's a fractionated food, it is almost impossible not to get enough protein. And here's the weird thing. There appear to be bacteria in our guts that convert sugars to protein. And we don't have that many of them, but like anything else, we get what we feed. So there are people who are endurance athletes who are called fruitarians, who live on fruit. Maybe 80 to 90% of their diet is raw fruit, maybe sometimes 100% in the summer. And when I do the calculations, I figure out that they're getting about 2 to 3% of calories from protein, which is too few. It's not enough. Fruit doesn't have protein. However, fruit does have amino acids. And fruit does have sugars and complex carbohydrates and simple carbohydrates and fiber. And when you give yourself an all-fruit diet, the bacteria that thrive on fruit will multiply and proliferate, and they appear to be able to take the amino acids and other aspects of other elements in fruit and convert it into usable protein. Now, protein is arguably the most important nutrient. And that's weird to hear me say it because I keep telling people not to worry about it. But I say that in the same way that oxygen is probably the most important gas that we need to breathe. And therefore, nature has made sure that we have an abundance and it's always available. Because if protein is so important, why is protein so important? Because the other macronutrients are interchangeable. You can turn carbohydrates into fat, and you can turn fat into carbohydrates, but you can't turn either of them into protein. Maybe there's those bacteria that can do it if you're eating in extreme fashion, but protein is so important for building our musculature, for building our bodies, that we always need to know that we have a good supply. Otherwise, we would have died out. If protein is so important and it was iffy whether we could get it, at a certain point we would have just died out. So that tells you when something is that important, that tells you that the body is super optimized to use every little bit of it. So not only do we get protein from food, most of the protein that we get is actually recycled us. So when we break down all the time, we break down our tissue eternally, and we pee it out, right? Uric acid is largely nitrogen based. It's right. That's where the protein goes. Most of it gets recycled. Most of the protein, and we have a very, very large, what's called a labile amino acid reserve. We have amino acids of all kinds, every kind you could possibly need, floating around, ready for use at any time. Because otherwise we wouldn't be here. So I hope that helps answer Marcia's question. If she's still around, you could call in. We could talk about it more specifically.
I asked. It's a funny thing.
Okay.
But now it's Nick who's asking, how do I get ripped?
How do I get ripped?
I eat about a pound of protein powder a day.
Okay. I would say instead of eating it, you should lift it repeatedly. You don't get ripped in the kitchen, you get ripped in the gym. So, there is a correlation that's not causative between being a huge protein consumer and getting huge muscles. So I don't know if Nick, if you want to get ripped in terms of like bodybuilding ripped, or just a comely six pack and well-defined muscles for function. But in either case, you build muscle by challenging it to failure and by doing it enough times and for long enough and consistently enough. That for most of us, they're at the very, very top echelons of the bodybuilding world and maybe the cage fighting world, UFC or MMA, you can get tiny little tweaks and gains by going through their formulas. But I've got to tell you, there are more and more natural bodybuilders who aren't taking not only steroids but pea powder or creatine or carnitine or various things like that, as well as a lot of now vegan bodybuilders, vegan UFC fighters who are proving that you can do everything naturally. And in fact, a lot of the vegan athletes I talk to, they say they're not that great as athletes. They became vegan because they needed an edge. They didn't have the same natural ability as some of their competitors. And what eliminating animal protein and animal foods did for them was it reduced inflammation so much so they could recover faster from their workouts, so they could get in 10, 20, 30% more workouts. And so if you adhere to the Malcolm Gladwell 10,000 hour dictum to become an expert at something, the more the deliberate practice helps. You can only practice so much if you're an athlete and you're stressing your body to the point where muscles are broken down and need to rebuild. So if you I'd ask Nick, what are you doing now to get ripped? You almost certainly don't need the protein. And if you're having, here's the thing. This is what I learned from my co-author Garth Davis, that protein in the absence of carbohydrates does absolutely nothing. So if you want to have a post-workout shake or powder or bar or something, and you're having pure protein and water, you're getting no benefit from it. You require carbohydrates with the protein in order to rebuild the muscle. So I'd invite you to check out chapter 15 or 16 in Protein Aholic, because Garth Davis is a gym rat. He hangs out at the gym a lot. He runs triathlons, so he's very familiar with the weightlifting and performance and endurance athlete scene and how to best optimize nutrition for outstanding performance.
And Nick is adding, what if I didn't want to work out though?
Okay, then I would do a Google search for Google Images search for six-pack abs and print it out and Scotch tape it to your stomach. Maybe masking tape or some cloth there, or you could get one of those muscle shirts.
Duct tape.
Duct tape. Okay. Yeah, no, you can't. If people could eat their way to great bodies, this would be the beaches in America would look amazing. Um, Sorry, maybe someone's going to invent something where you can just lie there and they'll stimulate your muscles to grow. Sort of a.
Don't they have something on TV? They advertise that belt that you press the button and it's supposed to.
Yeah, I believe everything I see on TV at 3 a.m. Yeah, I remember when I was a kid, my dad used to take me to the occasionally when he took me to the men's club at the Y. Mm-hmm. And the men's club was this fabulous magical place full of like real old men with unspeakable body hair and wrinkles, and I remember the sauna and I remember the jiggle machine. Mm-hmm. Used to stand on it. It was like, and these men, there are some visions that I cannot unsee. 70-year-old Jewish men wearing nothing but flip-flops in the jiggle machine. As far as I could tell,
enough.
It didn't work.
The men's club. Oh boy.
Well, I think I'll quote the Car Talk guys. You've wasted a perfectly good hour listening to Triangle Be Well. Nick, if you discover how to get ripped without putting in effort, I would love to know. I'm vain enough that I would try it. But in the meantime, what we understand about how to build muscles is to challenge them to failure repeatedly.
Now it's Marsha. Says, how do I get my kids to eat healthier?
That's
next week.
Yeah, I think we better tune in next week. So I'll say a couple of things. First of all, you got to be the role model. Now, the first thing I'd ask you is like, what age are your kids, and how many of them are there, and what works with them? Like, there are kids who are going to be oppositional with almost everything, right? There are times in my kids' lives where they were almost, predictably oppositional. So if I wanted them to go east, I would point west. So, I would look for other things that work. And you have to understand that there are several factors that are going to be important in getting your kids, but to eat better. One of them is that they're probably already addicted to certain foods. Most of us are. So that if you tell them, you're going to eat better, and they're not going to like it at first because the food is not going to be as tasty. So if they're young enough and you can just impose it and just, live through a period where your kid is basically going through withdrawal, and withdrawal from anything is not pretty. People tend not to bring out their best side, whether it's, the extreme of heroin or from smoking or drinking or anything that the body has to readjust. It has to, there's going to be pain there. So if, for some people, transitioning is good. For some people, transitioning is a terrible idea because you're constantly, imagine someone transitioning off of heroin, and every day they're getting just enough heroin to keep them stuck, right? So there are certain substances and certain people for whom cold tofu, cold turkey if you prefer, cold tofurkey, is a better approach. Now, one of my favorite books on getting kids to eat better is not by a plant-based person. It's by a woman named Dina Rose. It's called "It's Not About the Broccoli," and I would recommend reading that book, taking her specific dietary recommendations with a large teaspoon of salt, because she thinks about chicken and fish as health foods, and doesn't really understand that you can have like healthy pizza, healthy cookies. But that aside, it is a really, really smart book for setting down the most simplest rules, and then getting your kid, whatever age, from obviously the younger they are, the easier, but getting your kids to agree to certain things. And it's largely about giving them power, giving them the power to make choices within the parameters that you set, and having really, really simple rules that make sense. Now, ultimately, what I discovered is that your kids grow up and they have the rest of their lives in front of them. And so if you've gotten them to eat healthy and they're resenting every minute of it, by the time they leave your house at the age of 18 or 21 or 15 or 37 or whatever it might happen to be, that they're going to be living away from you for longer than they were living with you, hopefully. And so therefore you want to make sure that when they leave that they're autonomous in their choices, that you're just not imposing it on them and they can't wait to run away, go off to college and gain the freshman 50 rather than just the freshman 20. So I would say what I would recommend, Marcia, is call in next week and we can do coaching on your exact situation.
What a deal.
Yeah. So speaking of coaching and exact situations, if you would like help, if you inherited a sum of money and you had no idea how to take care of it, and you found yourself spending it and wasting it, you would probably find yourself an honest financial advisor, someone who gets paid either a flat fee or a percent of your gain. But you probably wouldn't just go to a broker who makes money off of every trade. They'd have a conflict of interest. Well, you were born with an even greater inheritance, which is your health. I don't care how bad your health was when you were born, it was enough to keep you going till now. And it's pretty remarkable, like the human body. And so whatever health you have, you want to save it and invest it and grow it. And that's what I do. I'm an honest broker of health advice. I'm a health advisor in the same way that someone else might be a financial advisor, and in the same way that I avoid conflict of interest in the way I set up my practice, the same way a financial advisor would be very transparent about how they get paid, and they only get paid by you and not by anyone else. That's how I work as well. I don't get money from pharmaceutical companies, and if you think your doctor can say that, go to propublica.org, click on Dollars for Docs, type in your doctor's name, and see how many doctors there are out there who take no money from pharmaceutical companies. If you think that's true of medical researchers, go to the Center for Integrity in Science, type in their name, and see how many of them get money from industry. When you ask dietitians for advice, ask them who sponsored the last conference they went to. And so you have to make sure that whoever you're talking to is knowledgeable, has a clinical model that will give you enough time, right? I can answer Marcia's question in the generalities, but to really help her, we're going to need 30 minutes, 45 minutes. You want someone who's going to be able to give you time, who can actually apply clinical judgment, do diagnosis, ask you questions, ask you about your whole health history, and not just take a 2-minute look at you and then give you a drug and send you on your way. So this is all the stuff that I do. I'm not a doctor. I am an advisor. And I share with you the pros and cons, the risks and benefits of all of your options. So, what I would love is if people came to me healthy with their nest egg, with their inheritance, and they say, what's the best way to invest this, to take care of it? Most people, in fact, come to me when they're in trouble, and I guess that's probably true of financial advisors as well, that someone's in $34,000 worth of debt, and they say, how am I going to get out of it? And I say, well, let's see, let's set up some habits, let's reconsolidate the debt, let's move things to a lower interest debt, let's teach you some skills. And that's what I do for the most part. People who are already stuck in the healthcare system, and I teach them how to be well and how to change the locus of control from the doctor, from the hospital, from the drug to yourself. So you can see I can actually control my own health. Just like when I went to get allergy shots, I felt like I wasn't in control. There was something wrong with me that needed to be fixed. When I changed my diet, now all of a sudden the locus of control is in my shopping cart and it's on my dinner plate. And that's very, very empowering. If you want to know more about that, if you think that a conversation between you and me might be useful to your health, might help you make better decisions, improve your lifestyle, and achieve true wellness and not just medical management of disease, visit trianglebewell.com or tbwell.com. TB as in Tango, Bravo, don't tell me. Nope, I don't have the W. Anyone? Anyone in chat? What's the W? Okay. Well, W-E-L-L. The E is echo, and the L is llama. Lima. I'm blanking on W. Victor. Anyway, trianglebewell.com. You can download the GPS healthcare report, or you can contact me, Howard, at trianglebewell.com or tbwell.com, and we can talk about you taking your health back, eliminating symptoms, reversing disease. It's amazing what's possible. Medical establishment doesn't believe this, doesn't realize it, doesn't know it, doesn't have experience of it. And to prove it to you, when you get well, go to your doctor and show them, tell them you're well, and they'll take blood tests and they won't believe it. And they've never seen anything like it before. Most of them will just dismiss it. They're not even curious, but some will say, you got to tell me what you did so I can tell my other patients. And that's how we're going to change the system. Again, one person at a time, one conversion at a time. And, we have something better. We have a better system of healthcare than what's out there. And over time, when you remove the conflicts of interest, the natural progression in nature is to move toward more efficiency, toward better health. So that's where we're going. If you want to be on the train early, contact me, Howard at trianglebewell.com. And as always, be well, my friends.
And the W?
The W is water? Whiskey. Whiskey. Of course.
You are tuned to the Nissan Communications Network. Our weekly lineup of call-in programs includes Computers 2K Now with Amnon Nissan, My Life, My Will with Gisela DiCarlo, The Tanya Love Show, Health Then with Debbie Bruck, Breaking Free with Marilyn Shannon, Triangle Be Well with Howard Jacobson, Lunch and Learn with Rabbi Yisrael Cutler, Lessons of Vietnam with NCVVI members, Parent Dome with Ryan Miller, Current Affairs with Amnon Nissan. And if you tuned in too late, you can always watch each program in its entirety or download an MP3 audio file of it in the archives section on nissancommunications.com. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on Twitter, and like us on Facebook. Sponsored by Atomos.com, makers of quality video recorders and converters, CarolinaApparel.com, and DeltaForce.net.